Welcome to the Rando podcast, everyone. I'm Chris Crimson.
And I'm Nyx. If you're new around here, we'd love it if you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our future deep dives.
Absolutely. We really appreciate you joining our conversation. And a big thank you to our sponsors over on YouTube, Chris, the Plant-Based, and Emma Advanced.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Your support makes these explorations possible.
It really does.
Let's unpack this. We're diving deep today into something, well, incredibly relevant. How what we eat, specifically plant-based diets, interacts with the trillions of microorganisms living in our gut.
The gut microbiome.
Exactly, the gut microbiome. And trust me, this relationship it's really a cornerstone of our health in ways you might not fully appreciate yet.
It's truly fascinating, isn't it, how these two, seemingly separate worlds are daily food choices, and this microscopic life inside us are so intimately linked and, well, fundamental to our overall well-being.
Absolutely. You see this huge surge, right? People choosing plant-based diets for all sorts of reasons: health, environment, ethics.
All valid points.
Yeah, and while we hear about the broad benefits, what's becoming really clear is the crucial role our gut microbiome plays in actually delivering those benefits. It's almost like this hidden control center inside us.
That's a great way to put it. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the gut microbiome acts as this vital intermediary. Think of it almost as a virtual endocrine organ, constantly communicating and influencing so many aspects of our biology based on the fuel we give it.
A virtual endocrine organ. I like that. So our mission today is to really get down to the nitty-gritty of this connection. We're going to explore how plant-based diets shape our gut microbiome.
And then what?
And then, in turn, how that impacts everything from our physical health, like metabolism, immune system, to our mental well-being through that amazing gut-brain axis.
Which we definitely need to unpack.
For sure. And even its role in, say, athletic performance.
Right. So that raises a fundamental question. Where do we even begin to unravel this complex interaction? I think a solid foundation requires understanding the gut microbiome itself first.
Makes sense. Lay the groundwork. Okay, so picture this. Inside your digestive tract, you've got this incredibly vast community, trillions upon trillions of microorganisms.
Trillions. It's hard to even comprehend the scale.
Totally. We're talking not just bacteria, but also archaea, fungi, viruses, even protozoa, all coexisting in this intricate ecosystem.
And what's truly astonishing is the sheer scale of it all. The number of these microbial cells in your gut could actually equal or maybe even surpass the total number of human cells in your entire body.
Wow. That's mind-blowing.
And their collective genetic material, the microbiome, it's just staggering. Over 3 million genes compared to our own, relatively modest count of around 23,000 human genes.
So they have this huge genetic toolkit.
Exactly. This vast genetic capacity is where many of their unique abilities come from.
It's like they possess this incredible metabolic power that our own bodies just don't have. Now, when we talk about the dominant players in this microbial city, who are the key groups?
Typically, in a healthy adult gut, the bacterial scene is dominated by two major groups, or phyla, firmicutes and bacteroidetes. These two usually make up more than 90% of the bacteria there.
Okay, firmicutes and bacteroidetes. Got it.
And generally speaking, though it's a simplification, plant-rich diets tend to favor bacteroidetes, which are often associated with fermenting fiber. Western diets sometimes see more firmicutes.
So they're the main workhorses. But it's not just them, right? There are other residents, too.
Oh, absolutely. You've also got actinobacteria. This group includes some really beneficial species you often find in probiotics like bifidobacterium.
Ah, bifido, yeah, heard of those.
Then there's proteobacteria. This is a more diverse group, and sometimes it can include types that might become problematic if they overgrow, so we generally want to keep their levels in check.
Okay.
Verrucomicrobia is another phylum containing the famous Akkermansia mucinifera, which is getting a lot of attention for its role in gut barrier health.
Akkermansia, right.
And let's not forget fusobacteria, usually present in smaller numbers.
It's like a whole cast of characters, each with different specialties.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it's not just bacteria.
No, exactly. You've got archaea, mainly the methanogens like Methanobrevibacter smithia. They produce methane gas. There are also eukaryotes, mostly yeast like Candida, which are usually kept in check in a healthy gut. And then there's this huge dynamic population of viruses called bacteriophages.
Phages, what do?
They specifically infect bacteria. So they can actually play a really significant role in shaping the bacterial community itself.
Yeah.
It's complex.
Wow. So it's this incredibly intricate and dynamic ecosystem. And what's really interesting is that everyone's microbiome is a bit different, isn't it? It's not one size fits all.
That's a crucial point. The gut microbiome is highly individual, almost like a fingerprint. While we share broad functional capabilities, the specific mix of microbial species varies considerably from person to person.
So what shapes that unique microbial ID then?
It's a mix of things, really. Starting very early in life, your genetics play a part, definitely.
Yeah.
How you were born vaginally or C-section matters.
Right.
Then there's age, where you live, your overall lifestyle, medications, especially antibiotics, they can have a huge impact.
Big time.
But arguably one of the most powerful and, importantly, modifiable shapers throughout life. It's diet.
Diet. Okay, that brings us back. So we have this incredibly diverse community, unique to each of us. Now, what exactly are all these trillions of microbes doing down there? It's got to be more than just, breaking down lunch.
Oh, far more. Their metabolic capabilities are really synergistic with ours. They perform tasks our human cells simply can't handle.
Okay, let's dig into some specifics. What are some of their key jobs?
Well, a major one is nutrient metabolism and synthesis. Think about complex carbohydrates and fiber stuff.
Yeah.
Our small intestine can't break down.
Right, the indigestible stuff.
Exactly. It reaches the colon, and that's where the gut microbes get to work. They ferment it.
And this fermentation, why is it so important?
It's crucial because it leads to the production of short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs. You've probably heard of acetate, propionate, and butyrate.
Yeah, SCFA is okay.
Now, butyrate is particularly fascinating. It's the main energy source for the cells lining our colon, the colonocytes.
So it feeds our own gut cells.
Precisely. This helps strengthen the gut lining, which is a critical barrier. But all three SCFAs, acetate, propionate, and butyrate, act as signaling molecules. They can influence our physiology way beyond the gut.
So they're not just local effects, they communicate systemically.
Exactly. They're not just waste products. They're beneficial compounds with really wide-ranging effects.
Right.
And beyond SCFAs, the microbiome is essential for making certain vitamins we need but can't produce enough of ourselves.
Like which ones?
Vitamin K, for example. And several B vitamins, B1, folate, B9, even B12, although the B12 made in the gut isn't always easily absorbed by us.
Interesting.
They also play a key role in metabolizing bile acids, which affects how we absorb fats and influences signaling pathways. Plus, they're involved in metabolizing amino acids like tryptophan.
The serotonin precursor.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And they contribute to overall lipid metabolism, too. It's a very busy place down there.
It really sounds like a sophisticated chemical factory operating right inside us. Okay, nutrient metabolism is huge. What else are these microbes up to?
Another absolutely critical function is modulating our immune system. You might be surprised to learn that the majority, maybe around 80% of our immune cells, actually reside in the gut.
80%. Wow.
Yeah. And the gut microbiota is essential for the proper development, education, and regulation of both our innate and adaptive immune systems.
So they're like the drill sergeants and regulators for our immune cells.
In a way, yes. They help train our immune system to tell friend from foe. Establishing tolerance to harmless food bits and our own good bacteria while staying vigilant against actual pathogens.
That's a crucial balance.
It is. And microbial components, plus those SCFAs again, directly interact with immune cells. They influence what type of immune cells develop and how they behave. For example, they can promote regulatory T cells, which help calm down excessive immune responses.
The TREGs, right.
Exactly. And they modulate the production of immune signaling molecules called cytokines. Plus, the microbiota stimulates the production of secretory IgA, an important antibody protecting our gut lining.
So crucial for keeping our immune system balanced and effective. What about protecting us from bad bugs, pathogens?
That's where colonization resistance comes in. A healthy, well-established gut microbiota basically acts as a barrier against invaders.
How does that work?
Well, they compete for food and for space to attach to the gut lining, making it harder for newcomers to get established. They can also change the local environment, like lowering the pH with SCFAs, which inhibits some pathogens.
Okay.
And some gut bacteria even produce their own antimicrobial substances, things like bacteriocins, that can directly kill or inhibit other microbes.
Like having a built-in security force. And I've heard a lot about the gut barrier. What's the microbiome's role there?
Maintaining the integrity of that gut barrier is absolutely vital. It's essentially a single layer of cells separating our gut contents from the rest of our body.
Pretty thin line of defense.
It is. And the microbiome, especially through butyrate, plays a key role. Butyrate fuels these barrier cells, keeps them healthy, strengthens the tight junctions between them.
Reducing permeability.
Exactly. Reduces that leaky gut phenomenon. The microbiota also stimulates mucus production, which is another protective layer. If this barrier gets compromised, things like LPS.
That inflammatory bacterial component.
Right. LPS can leak into the bloodstream, triggering systemic inflammation. Not good.
Wow. So the gut microbiome is truly this multifaceted entity. Essential for digestion, yes, but also immunity, nutrient production, barrier function. It's way more than just digestion.
Absolutely. It's a metabolically active organ with unique genetic capabilities that profoundly influence our whole physiology. Its influence reaches far beyond the gut itself.
Okay, so we've established this complex ecosystem and its vital jobs. Now, what does it mean for the system to be in good shape, and what happens when things go wrong? That's where eubiosis and dysbiosis come in, right?
Precisely. Eubiosis basically means a state of equilibrium, a healthy balance within the gut microbial ecosystem.
What does that look like?
It's typically characterized by high microbial diversity. Lots of different types of microbes living together harmoniously. This leads to a stable, resilient system that can effectively perform all those beneficial functions we just talked about.
Nutrient metabolism, immune stuff, barrier defense.
All of it. And often, in eubiosis, you see a good balance between those big groups, firmicutes and Bacteroides, with lower levels of potentially troublesome proteobacteria.
So it's like a well-run, diverse city. Everyone has a role contributing to the community's health. And then there's the flip side, dysbiosis.
Dysbiosis is when that balance gets thrown off. It's an imbalance in the composition, the function, or even where the microbes are located in the gut.
What does that involve?
It can mean losing beneficial microbes, seeing an overgrowth of potentially harmful ones, sometimes called pathobionts, and often a reduction in overall microbial diversity.
And you mentioned diversity is generally a good thing. Why is that so important?
Generally, yes. High diversity is often seen as a marker of a healthy, resilient microbiome. A more diverse system is thought to be more stable, better able to handle disturbances like, say, a course of antibiotics, and bounce back more readily.
And low diversity is linked to problems?
We see reduced diversity linked with a range of chronic conditions.
Yeah.
Things like inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, allergies, even some cancers.
But it's not just about the number of species, is it?
No, that's a key point. High diversity alone isn't a guarantee of health. The specific functions of the microbes present are also critical. What are they actually doing? There are even some situations where high diversity has been linked to negative outcomes, so function matters just as much, if not more.
Okay. So dysbiosis isn't just a different mix. It can actually contribute to health problems. How does that connection work?
Exactly. It's increasingly understood that dysbiosis isn't just a side effect of disease. It can be a driver. That imbalance can lead to that impaired gut barrier, the leaky gut we mentioned.
Letting inflammatory stuff through.
Right. More LPS and other bacterial bits crossing into the bloodstream. This triggers chronic, low-grade systemic inflammation, which is implicated in so many chronic diseases. Plus, changes in the kinds of metabolites the microbes produce can disrupt metabolic signaling and immune responses.
So it's this kind of vicious cycle. Imbalance leads to inflammation, which can fuel disease.
Yeah.
This really highlights how vital it is to maintain that balance, that eubiosis.
Precisely. And it highlights the potential for interventions like diet to help restore that balance. The gut really is a central player, and its state can have far-reaching consequences.
All right, solid foundation on the microbiome. Now let's zoom back in on our main topic, plant-based diets. How exactly do these eating patterns impact this intricate microbial world inside us?
Well, as we've said, diet is arguably the most significant factor influencing the microbiome's composition and function. And plant-based diets, by their very nature, introduce a different mix of nutrients and compounds compared to diets heavy in animal products. This has a profound effect.
Now, when we say plant-based diet, it's not just one single thing, is it? It's more of a spectrum.
That's right. You have vegan diets, zero animal products at all. Vegetarian diets usually cut out meat, poultry, fish, but might include dairy and eggs.
Lacto-ovo-vegetarians.
Yes. And then you have more flexible approaches like flexitarian or semi-vegetarian diets, which really prioritize plants but allow occasional animal products.
Yeah.
Even Mediterranean-style diets, while not strictly vegetarian, are very plant-forward.
But the common thread is way more plant foods compared to a typical Western diet.
Exactly. And it's the unique components abundant in these plant foods that really drive the changes we see in the gut microbiome. These components act as the primary substrates, the main food sources for our gut microbes.
Okay, so what are some of these key plant components that make such a difference? Fiber has to be top of the list, right?
Dietary fiber is definitely a major one. Found exclusively in plants, it's basically non-digestible carbohydrates that make it all the way to the colon,
Where the microbes are waiting.
ready to feast. This fiber is their primary fuel. And as we discussed, fermenting this fiber leads to those beneficial SCFAs.
And feeding on fiber encourages certain microbes.
Yes, high fiber intake consistently promotes the growth of beneficial bacteria. We're talking important SCFA producers like Ruminococcus, Eubacterium rectale, Rosaburia, also Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus, which are often linked to good gut health.
What about Faecalibacterium? I hear that one mentioned a lot.
Yes, Faecalibacterium prausnitzii is another key butyrate producer and has strong anti-inflammatory properties. High fiber diets often boost its numbers too. And interestingly, this can sometimes lead to a reduction in less desirable bacteria, like certain Clostridium or Enterococcus.
And it's not just about the amount of fiber, right? The type matters too.
Absolutely. Different microbes prefer different types of fiber. So eating a wide variety of plant foods, fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, provides diverse fibers, feeding a more diverse and beneficial microbial community.
Variety again. Okay, what's another important plant component?
Resistant starch is another fascinating one. Like the name says, it resists digestion in the small intestine and gets fermented in the large intestine.
Similar to fiber, then.
Similar outcome, yes. It's particularly effective at stimulating the production of butyrate, that crucial SCFA for gut lining health. Certain bacteria like Ruminococcus bromii and some Bifidobacterium and Eubacterium species are really good at fermenting it.
And where do we find resistant starch?
Good sources include legumes, whole grains, and interestingly, cooked and then cooled potatoes or rice. The cooling process increases the resistant starch content.
Huh. That cooking and cooling trick again. What about all those colorful compounds in plants? Polyphenols.
Polyphenols,
Yeah?
a huge and diverse group, found in abundance in fruits, vegetables, tea, coffee, red wine, dark chocolate.
The good stuff.
Right. And most of these actually escape absorption higher up and reach the colon. Their gut bacteria metabolize them into smaller, simpler compounds like phenolic acids.
Which we can absorb.
Yes, and these smaller compounds are often more bioactive, contributing to the health benefits we link with polyphenol-rich foods. Think of elagitannins from berries being converted to urolithins, powerful anti-inflammatory agents.
Oh.
Plus, polyphenols themselves can boost beneficial bacteria like Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus, maybe acting a bit like prebiotics, and they might even have some antimicrobial effects against less desirable microbes. There's also interplay between fiber and polyphenols affecting how they're metabolized.
Working together. Okay, what about protein? Plant protein versus animal protein in the gut.
Good question. Legumes, soy, nuts, seeds, whole grains all provide plant protein. Compared to diets high in animal protein, those emphasizing plant protein have been linked to increases in beneficial bacteria like Bifidobacterium and Lactobacillus, higher SCFA production, a stronger gut barrier, and less inflammation.
Sounds pretty positive. Any downsides?
Well, sometimes plant proteins can be slightly less digestible than animal proteins, and how they're processed matters. So the source and quality are still important considerations.
Okay, so it really sounds like shifting to a plant-based diet fundamentally changes the fuel source for our microbiome. Less animal fat and protein, more complex carbs, and these cool phytochemicals. This acts like a selective pressure, right, favoring certain microbes.
Precisely. It's a fundamental shift in what we're feeding our internal ecosystem, and the ecosystem responds accordingly.
Okay, so plant-based diets provide different fuel. What does this actually do to the microbial community? Do we see big shifts in who's living there?
Yes, we definitely see changes. Plant-based diets tend to promote bacteria that are really good at fermenting those complex carbohydrates we've been talking about.
Like the fiber eaters.
Exactly. Studies often show more beneficial genera like Bifidobacterium, Lactobacillus, Faecalibacterium, that big butyrate producer Rosaburia, and also Prevotella.
Those are generally the good guys we want more of. What about the ones we want less of?
Well, there tends to be a reduction in groups considered more pro-inflammatory or potential pathobionts. Things like certain Clostridium species and Enterococcus, Balafilla, that one thrives on fat-rich diets and produces hydrogen sulfide.
Not ideal.
No.
Yeah.
There may be reductions in things like Ruminococcus torx. So it's like we're gently nudging the balance towards a more beneficial profile.
Makes sense. Now, what about overall diversity? We said high diversity is generally good. How do plant-based diets stack up there?
That's where it gets a bit more complex. The impact on alpha diversity, the richness and evenness, isn't totally straightforward. Some studies do show that plant-based diets, or high intakes of fruits, veggies, and fiber, lead to greater diversity.
Okay, that fits the narrative.
Quite a few studies have actually found that vegans and vegetarians have lower or similar alpha diversity compared to omnivores.
Really? That's surprising. Why would that be?
There are a few potential reasons. Maybe excluding certain food groups, like dairy, which can introduce specific microbes or substrates, or perhaps the rapid big increase in fiber when someone switches could cause a quick shift in the ecosystem, maybe temporarily reducing diversity for some. It really underlines the point that the quality and variety of plant foods are crucial. Just focusing on that single diversity number might not give the full picture.
So it's not just more species, but the right species doing the right things.
Exactly. And one of the most consistent right things that happens with plant-based diets is that significant boost in SCFA production.
Ah, yes, those beneficial fermentation byproducts again.
Can't emphasize them enough. The abundant fiber and resistant starch provide ample fuel for the bacteria that make SCFAs. This leads to substantially higher levels of acetate, propionate, and especially butyrate from things like resistant starch.
Which is a huge contrast to typical Western diets.
Absolutely. Western diets are often low in these substrates, resulting in much lower SCFA levels. This increase in SCFAs is a really consistent finding with plant-based eating.
So even if the exact species mix varies, the metabolic output, those beneficial SCFAs, seems to be a pretty reliable outcome.
That's a very insightful way to put it. While these specific bacterial names might differ somewhat between studies or individuals, the functional metabolic output, particularly higher SCFAs, is much more consistently observed.
Okay, let's delve a bit more into those comparisons.
Right.
What are the key differences we typically see between the microbiomes of plant-based eaters and omnivores?
Well, as we touched on, plant-based eaters often show higher bacteroides, especially Prevotella, which loves fiber. Bacteroids, often linked more to protein and fat, might be less dominant, but that can vary. Those beneficial, Generobifidobacterium, Lactobacillus, Faecalibacterium, Rosebaria, frequently appear in higher numbers in plant-based groups.
The good guys are thriving.
Generally, yes. And there's a tendency for reduced bilophila and potentially less of those pro-inflammatory Ruminococcus torques or certain Clostridia, the old firmicutes to bacteroidates ratio. That doesn't seem to hold up consistently as a simple differentiator here.
So the composition is nuanced, but you stress the metabolic differences are more consistent and maybe more important.
Exactly. Function over form, perhaps. As we highlighted, plant-based individuals almost always show higher levels of SCFAs, both in stool and circulating. They also tend to have higher levels of those beneficial metabolites from polyphenol breakdown.
And fewer of the bad ones.
Yes. Importantly, often lower concentrations of metabolites linked to less favorable outcomes like TMAO from choline and carnitine breakdown, mostly from animal products and some byproducts of protein putrefaction like indole or pCRES.
So even if the microbial players aren't always drastically different, the plant-based diet directs their activity in a more beneficial way.
That's precisely the key takeaway. Despite individual variation, the functional metabolic output shows more pronounced distinctions. It highlights the importance of what the microbes are doing, driven by the fuel we give them. And this shift, more good stuff, less bad stuff, forms a really strong mechanistic link between plant-based diets and positive health outcomes. Function seems more consistent than just diversity metrics here.
Okay, now we're really getting somewhere. We see how plant-based diets change the microbiome's function. Let's connect the dots further. How do these changes actually translate into tangible benefits for our physical health?
Right. This is where it gets really practical. This isn't just interesting biology. It has significant impacts on inflammation, immune function, metabolic regulation. The microbiome is like the translator, turning dietary input into physiological signals.
Okay, let's start with inflammation and the immune system. We know dysbiosis can fuel inflammation. How do plant-based diets, via the microbiome, help cool things down?
Well, chronic low-grade inflammation is a key driver of so many modern diseases. And the gut microbiome is central to regulating it. We talked about leaky gut.
Letting LPS through, triggering inflammation.
Exactly. But those SCFAs, abundant with plant-based diets, are heroes here. Butyrate fuels colon cells, strengthening the barrier, making it less leaky. And SCFAs directly talk to immune cells. They bind to specific receptors on immune and epithelial cells, triggering pathways that dampen inflammation. They can act as HDAC inhibitors too.
HDAC inhibitors, what does that mean?
It means they can change how genes are expressed in immune cells, pushing them towards anti-inflammatory profiles, promoting TREGs, producing anti-inflammatory signals like IL-10, while suppressing pro-inflammatory pathways like NFUI.
So they're actively calming the immune system down.
Yes. Plus, plant-based diets mean less substrate for things like TMAO production. And don't forget the direct anti-inflammatory effects of polyphenols themselves. So overall, the PBD-induced microbial shifts foster a less inflammatory gut with a stronger barrier, reducing that harmful systemic inflammation.
That's a powerful anti-inflammatory effect. Now, what about metabolic health? Plant-based diets are often touted for blood sugar control and weight management. How is the microbiome involved?
Big time. The microbiome modulation has significant implications here. For insulin sensitivity and glucose control, there's a growing link. SCFAs seem key again.
How do they help with blood sugar?
They might improve insulin sensitivity, possibly by stimulating gut hormones like GLP-1, which helps insulin secretion and action. They might also directly influence glucose use and reduce inflammation linked to insulin resistance. Clinical trials back this up. PBDs often improve insulin resistance markers.
Especially in people carrying extra weight.
Often, yes. And speaking of weight, plant-based diets are consistently linked to lower BMI and obesity risk in large studies, and they work for weight loss in trials.
What's the microbiome's contribution to weight loss?
Several things. It influences energy extraction from food. SCFAs affect appetite hormones like PYY and GLP-1, promoting fullness. Plus, the high fiber itself makes you feel full. Studies show PBDs can reduce total and visceral fat, the dangerous kind.
Good points. And finally, cardiovascular health, the heart-health connection.
Very strong link between PBDs and better cardiovascular health. The microbiome mediates this too. Reduced TMAO is a big factor, as TMAO is linked to artery hardening.
Right, less choline and carnitine intake?
Exactly. SCFAs might also influence lipid metabolism, potentially lowering cholesterol and even blood pressure regulation. And that overall reduction in systemic inflammation, that's great for blood vessel health. Meta-analyses confirm lower LDL cholesterol and ApoB with vegetarian-vegan diets.
So it really paints a picture of the gut microbiome as this central hub, translating the plant-based diet into beneficial metabolites, reducing inflammatory triggers, leading to real physical health benefits across the board.
Absolutely. The shared mechanisms, especially around gut barrier integrity and inflammation control, likely explain the broad protective effects we see against so many chronic conditions.
We've covered physical health really well, but what about our minds? The gut-brain axis is such a hot topic. How does the plant-based diet microbiome link play into mental well-being?
Ah, yes, the microbiotic gut-brain axis, or MGBA. A fascinating and rapidly evolving field. The microbiome's influence definitely extends to our mental state.
MGBA sounds complex. Break it down for us.
Think of it as this intricate two-way communication superhighway, connecting the gut, its microbes, and our central nervous system, the brain.
Two-way street.
Definitely. Communication flows in both directions. It uses multiple pathways. Neural pathways like the vagus nerve, a direct line, and the enteric nervous system, the second brain in our gut.
Okay, nerves. What else?
Endocrine pathways.
Yeah.
The HPA axis, our stress response system, is modulated by microbes. Gut hormones like serotonin, GLP-1, PYY respond to microbial signals too. Immune pathways are involved cytokines crossing the blood-brain barrier or signaling via nerves, influencing neuroinflammation.
Inflammation in the brain.
Potentially, yes. And finally, metabolic pathways. Microbial metabolites, SCFAs, amino acid products, enter the circulation. Some might cross the blood-brain barrier, or they influence peripheral signals that reach the brain.
Wow, so many connections. And it's bidirectional gut affects brain, brain affects gut.
Exactly. Stress impacts your gut, and your gut health impacts your brain.
Okay, so how do those microbial metabolites we keep mentioning, like SCFAs, actually influence brain function through this MGBA?
They're key signaling molecules. Take SCFAs. Acetate, one of the main ones, actually enters the brain quite readily. It can participate in neurotransmitter metabolism, like for glutamate and GABA, especially in areas like the hypothalamus.
Directly involved in brain chemistry.
To some extent. More broadly, SCFAs affect the brain indirectly too, by modulating systemic inflammation, strengthening the blood-brain barrier itself, regulating the stress response via the HPA axis, and influencing neurotransmitter levels and neurotrophic factors.
What about neurotransmitters made in the gut, like serotonin? Does that reach the brain?
That's a common question. The microbiome heavily impacts the serotonin pathway via tryptophan availability. Microbes can use tryptophan or shut it down other pathways. They can make neurotransmitters like serotonin. Most is made in the gut, GABA, dopamine. But these probably don't cross the blood-brain barrier effectively themselves.
So their main influence is indirect.
Likely, yes. Through the vagus nerve, the ENS, peripheral processes, immune modulation. So the microbiome is this crucial MGBA modulator via SCFAs, amino acid metabolism, immune and endocrine interactions influencing neurotransmission, neuroinflammation, stress, mood, cognition. It's all connected.
It's incredibly complex. So the hypothesis is plant-based diets change the microbiome, which then affects mental health via this axis. What's the evidence look like?
That's the million-dollar question, and honestly, the research is still evolving and a bit mixed. We know dysbiosis is linked to higher risk or severity of depression, anxiety, stress, so the idea PBDs, by improving the microbiome, could boost mental health is plausible.
And some studies support this.
Yes. Some observational and intervention studies suggest vegetarian or vegan diets might be linked to improved mood, less anxiety, better well-being. Potential mechanisms include more SCFAs, better tryptophan handling, less inflammation. Plus, the antioxidants and phytochemicals in plants have neuroprotective effects.
I sense a but coming.
Yes, but other studies, including big reviews and meta-analyses, report conflicting findings. Some even suggest a higher risk of depression in vegans-vegetarians, or find no significant link. Some find weird age effects, like younger people reporting more anxiety on PBDs.
Higher risk. That seems counterintuitive. What could explain that?
A huge potential confounder is nutrient deficiencies in poorly planned plant-based diets. This is critical. Nutrients like vitamin B12, omega-3s, EPHA, iron, zinc, they're less abundant or less bioavailable from plants, and they're absolutely crucial for brain health and mood.
So deficiencies could negate any microbiome benefits.
Exactly. Deficiencies in these are independently linked to higher risk of depression, anxiety, cognitive issues. So the potential pluses from a healthier PBD-induced microbiome might get canceled out if the diet isn't nutritionally complete. Diet quality is paramount, regardless of animal product intake.
So the take-home is, while PBDs can foster a microbiome theoretically better for mental health, more SCFAs, less inflammation, the real-world impact is inconsistent. It strongly suggests nutritional gaps in poorly planned PBDs can counteract benefits.
Precisely. Achieving mental well-being on a plant-based diet likely needs a dual focus: optimizing the microbiome and ensuring adequate intake of critical brain nutrients through food or supplements. It's not just about what you exclude, but what you include and absorb.
Okay, fascinating nuance there. Let's shift gears again. Athletic performance. This is a big one for many listeners. How does the plant-based diet microbiome axis play into how athletes perform?
This is another exciting emerging area. The gut microbiome is increasingly recognized as a significant factor for athletes influencing training adaptation, energy recovery.
Is there a specific athlete's microbiome? Do athletes generally have different gut bugs than sedentary folks?
It seems so.
Yeah.
Often. Studies show athletes, especially endurance athletes, often have distinct profiles. Maybe greater diversity, more SCFA producers like Faecalibacterium or Roseburia, even specific bugs linked to energy metabolism or lactate use like Protella, Akkermansia, or Veillonella.
Veillonella, what's special about that one?
Some research suggests Veillonella can actually utilize lactate, the byproduct of intense exercise, potentially as fuel. Interesting stuff. The findings vary by sport, intensity, suggesting maybe sport-specific signatures.
And it's bidirectional. Exercise shapes the gut, gut shapes performance.
That's the thinking. Exercise often boosts diversity and beneficial microbes, and the microbiome is hypothesized to influence athletic capacity and adaptation.
Okay, so how does the microbiome, potentially shaped by a PDD, affect energy metabolism and fuel use during exercise?
Well, the microbiome contributes a bit to energy by fermenting carbs into SCFAs, which we can absorb and use. Maybe 10% of daily energy, but possibly relevant during long efforts. More broadly, diet dictates fuel use. High carb is traditional for endurance, maximizing glycogen. PBDs are typically high carb, so theoretically good for fuel.
What about higher fat protein diets?
They shift towards fat burning. Might help ultra-endurance, but could impair high-intensity work. One study linked high carb with better time trials and specific gut bugs, while high protein seemed to impair performance. The microbiome adapts its enzymes based on our long-term diet.
So a well-planned PBD provides carbs, and the microbiome might adapt to help use them. What about nutrient absorption for athletes? Any PBD-specific issues?
Yes, important considerations. The microbiome makes vitamin K, some B-vits. SCFAs might help mineral absorption, but more research needed there. A key concern for plant-based athletes is anti-nutrients in some plants, phytates, tannins.
They block mineral absorption.
They can reduce bioavailability of minerals like iron and zinc compared to animal sources. Plant proteins can also be slightly less bioavailable, so careful planning is essential. Food prep like soaking, sprouting, fermenting can help. Supplementation might be needed.
Strategy is key. Okay, how does this all potentially translate to endurance, strength, and recovery for plant-based athletes?
For endurance, the high carbs in PBDs could be an advantage for glycogen. Potential benefits like better blood flow, less oxidative stress, lower weight might also help. Microbiome might chip in via SCFAs or lactate use. But direct evidence for superior endurance on PBDs versus well-planned Omni diets. It's limited, sometimes conflicting.
What about strength? Can you build muscle effectively on plants?
Absolutely. If total protein is sufficient, potentially needing higher intake and quality is good, ensuring enough essential amino acids, especially leucine. Some studies suggest Omni might allow slightly faster initial gains, but long-term strength can be comparable with smart PBD planning. Microbiome's role is less direct, maybe via inflammation or nutrient availability. Creatine supplementation is often particularly helpful for vegan, vegetarian athletes.
Protein, right, and recovery. Any PBD advantages there?
Potentially. The high antioxidants and phytochemicals in PBDs, maybe lower pro-inflammatory factors, could enhance recovery by reducing exercise-induced oxidative stress and inflammation. The microbiome contributes via SCFA anti-inflammatory effects and immune modulation post-exercise. Probiotics are even being studied for reducing muscle damage.
So potential benefits across the board, but always with that caveat of careful planning, especially protein and key micronutrients.
Exactly. And one more crucial thing for athletes, tummy troubles. GI distress is common, especially in endurance sports. How does the PBD microbiome link fit in?
Good point. Gut issues can really ruin a race or training session. Exercise itself is stressful on the gut, right?
Yes, intense or prolonged exercise can reduce gut blood flow, cause some ischemia, plus mechanical jostling. This can increase gut permeability and inflammation. A healthy, resilient microbiome is thought to be protective, strengthening the barrier, modulating immunity.
So a PBD helping the microbiome could help prevent GI issues.
Potentially, yes. Promoting SCFA production, especially butyrate for gut cells, and fostering beneficial microbes could help mitigate problems. But caution. Some high-fiber PBD foods are also high in FODMAPs.
Those fermentable carbs that trigger symptoms in some people.
Right. So sensitive individuals need careful food selection and gradual transition. Probiotics, prebiotics are also being studied for managing GI symptoms in athletes. It's complex.
So again, it comes back to this intricate interplay. Diet, microbiome, physiology, performance. The microbiome is this key interface.
Precisely. And successful PBD implementation for athletes requires meticulous planning for energy, protein, quality, quantity, and micronutrients like iron, zinc, B12, omega-3s.
Okay, this has been incredibly thorough. For listeners who are now thinking, right, I want to optimize my gut through plant-based eating, what are some actionable, evidence-based strategies they can actually use?
Great question. We can definitely offer some practical steps. First and foremost, prioritize dietary diversity. Don't just eat the same few plant foods. Aim for a wide variety of different fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, nuts, seeds.
Eat the rainbow, essentially.
Exactly. Aim for, say, 30-plus different plant types per week if you can. That feeds a diverse microbiome.
30 a week. Okay, a good target. What's next?
Embrace fiber-rich foods. Make whole plant foods the foundation. Include soluble fiber oats, legumes, apples, citrus, sprouts, and soluble fiber whole wheat, bran, nuts, seeds, berries, cauliflower, and resistant starch legumes, whole grains, that cooked, cooled stuff.
Give them that mix of different fiber types we talked about.
It's crucial. Next, incorporate polyphenol powerhouses. Berries, grapes, dark chocolate in moderation, green tea, coffee, nuts, seeds, colorful veggies. They feed good bugs and have their own benefits.
Sounds enjoyable. What else?
Include fermented foods. Sauerkraut, kimchi, tempeh, miso, plant-based yogurts with live cultures. These can introduce beneficial microbes directly.
Natural probiotics. Makes sense.
Right. Also, choose quality plant proteins. Diverse sources like legumes, soy, nuts, seeds, quinoa. Combine them throughout the day to get a complete amino acid profile.
Okay. And for people new to this or upping their fiber, any tips?
Definitely transition gradually. Increase fiber slowly to let your gut adapt. Avoids gas and bloating. Drink plenty of water too. Fiber needs water. And focus on whole foods. Prioritize minimally processed plants over hyper-processed vegan junk food.
Good advice. What about prebiotics or probiotics specifically?
Consider prebiotic-rich foods first. Chicory root, onions, garlic, Jerusalem artichokes feed your existing good bugs. Supplements like inulin or psyllium can be used if needed. For probiotics, start with fermented foods. If considering supplements, especially for specific issues or as an athlete, probably best to consult a healthcare professional or registered dietitian. It's not one size fits all.
Personalized advice is key there. Any other general tips?
Yes, hydration is vital with more fiber. Mindful eating, chewing well, less stress can help gut health. Managing stress overall has a big impact on the gut-brain axis.
Good reminders. And any quick recap for athletes implementing this?
For athletes, tailor carbs to training needs. Ensure adequate energy and protein, maybe higher targets. Think about fiber timing around workouts. Monitor iron and B12. And consider creatine if you're vegan, vegetarian strength training.
Fantastic. Lots of really practical, actionable advice there for harnessing plant power for gut health.
Absolutely. These strategies provide a solid framework for anyone looking to leverage that plant-based diet microbiome connection for better health.
So to really wrap this all up, it's crystal clear that the gut microbiome isn't just a bystander. It's this absolutely crucial intermediary in how plant-based diets affect our health.
Precisely. It's the central hub, the translator between diet and physiology.
We've seen how it expertly ferments plant components, cranking out those vital SCFAs, and how PBDs shape the microbial community, maybe not always identically composition-wise, but consistently shifting its function towards benefit.
Yes, that consistent increase in SCFAs, those polyphenol metabolites, and the reduction in less desirable stuff like TMAO, those are the really key functional takeaways.
And this translates into pretty remarkable health advantages.
Yeah.
Reduced inflammation, better immune balance, improved metabolic markers, lower cardiovascular risk.
The evidence for that PBD microbiome interaction driving these physical health benefits is really quite strong and growing.
The mental well-being link, though, seems a bit more complex. Requires that extra attention to overall nutrient intake, not just the microbiome.
It does. Huge potential via the gut-brain axis, but absolutely critical not to overlook essential brain nutrients that might be harder to get from plants alone. A truly holistic nutritional view is needed there.
And for athletes, potential gains in performance and recovery, but contingent on meticulous planning for energy, protein, and those key micronutrients.
Exactly. The microbiome is a lever athletes can pull with diet, but it needs to be part of a smart, comprehensive strategy.
So the big message seems to be, consciously choosing a diverse, well-planned, whole food plant-based diet is an incredibly powerful tool. It supports a thriving gut microbiome, which in turn significantly boosts physical health, potentially mental well-being, and can support athletic goals.
That's a fantastic summary. And it's crucial to remember that individual responses vary. That's why the research into personalized nutrition based on your specific microbiome is so exciting for the future. Continued research is absolutely essential.
Well, this has been an absolutely illuminating deep dive. Thank you so much for breaking down this complex world of plant-based diets and the gut microbiome so clearly.
My pleasure. It's a truly fascinating area with so much potential for empowering people in their health journeys.
And a huge thank you to all of you listening for joining us today for this in-depth exploration. We really hope you found these insights valuable, maybe even inspiring to think more about that incredible microbial world teeming inside you.
Hopefully some actionable takeaways too.
Definitely. We encourage you to consider some of those strategies we discussed, maybe explore further based on your own interests and health goals. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How future personalized dietary advice tailored to our unique microbiomes could just revolutionize healthcare and wellness.
The potential is certainly there. It's an exciting time for gut health research.
Thanks again to everyone for tuning in. A big shout out and thank you to our sponsors, Chris, the plant-based, and Emma, Advanced, over on YouTube. We really appreciate your support.
Yes, thank you.
If you enjoyed this deep dive and want to catch more conversations like this, exploring health and well-being, please do hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next one. We wish you all the very best on your own health journey. Goodbye for now.
Take care, everyone.